My marriage was like a museum exhibit, beautiful, expensive, and full of things nobody actually touched anymore. I should have seen the warning signs when Linda started working late 3 nights a week, but I was too busy perfecting protein synthesis models to notice my wife was synthesizing a relationship with someone else. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Robert Fox, and I'm a biochemistry researcher at Boston Biotech. 36 years old, decent salary, decent life, decent marriage, or so I thought until last Tuesday when I found a lipstick-stained tie that wasn't mine in Linda's purse. The shade was called Passionate Plum. I knew because I checked the receipt. Linda Peterson-Fox, my wife of 4 years, is a museum curator with champagne tastes and a beer budget. Well, my beer budget anyway. She's beautiful in that polished way that screams money and breeding, which explains why her father never thought I was good enough for his princess. That father-in-law, Mr. Charles Peterson, runs Peterson Pharmaceuticals like his personal kingdom. 60 years old, silver hair, and the kind of smile that makes you check your wallet afterward. He's never liked me, probably because I actually earned my position instead of inheriting it. The trouble started 3 months ago when Linda began mentioning Ethan Lowe constantly. Ethan this, Ethan that. Ethan's so smart. Ethan's so ambitious. Ethan got promoted to project manager at Daddy's company. I should have been suspicious when she started buying expensive gifts for client appreciation that somehow always ended up going to Ethan. Robert, you should meet Ethan properly, Linda said over breakfast last week, not looking up from her phone. Daddy's having a dinner with some Chinese investors next Friday. You should come. I nearly choked on my coffee. Charles Peterson inviting me to a business dinner? That was like a shark inviting a minnow to lunch. Why the sudden inclusion? Because you speak Mandarin, obviously. She finally looked at me, those green eyes calculating. Daddy needs someone who can understand what the clients are really saying. What Linda didn't know was that I'd spent 2 years in Shanghai during graduate school, becoming fluent enough to dream in Mandarin. What she also didn't know was that I'd already hired my friend Sam Martinez, an ex-cop turned private investigator, to follow her around. Sam's report arrived Thursday morning. Photographs of Linda and Ethan at the Marriott downtown, expense reports showing suspicious charges, and text messages that would make a sailor blush. My favorite was Linda texting Ethan. Can't wait for Robert to be out of the picture. Daddy promised you that VP position once we're together. I stared at the evidence spread across my kitchen table, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. That would come later. This was pure, calculating rage. The dinner was set for Friday night at Golden Dragon, the most expensive Chinese restaurant in Boston. Private VIP room, naturally. I spent Thursday night planning and Friday preparing. By the time I put on my best suit, I was ready for war. The Golden Dragon's VIP room reeked of money and expensive cologne, red silk wallpaper, jade decorations, and a round table that probably cost more than my car. I arrived exactly on time, playing the dutiful son-in-law role to perfection. Charles Peterson stood near the window, his bulk filling an expensive suit, talking to a distinguished Chinese man in his 50s. That would be Mr. Zhang Wei, according to Sam's research, a pharmaceutical investor from Hong Kong with connections throughout Asia. Robert, Charles boomed, his voice carrying that fake warmth he reserved for people he needed. Come meet Mr. Zhang. This is my son-in-law I told you about. I shook hands with Mr. Zhang, who smiled politely and said in accented English, Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Fox. Charles tells me you work in biochemistry. That's right. Protein synthesis research mostly. I kept my voice neutral, friendly but not over-eager. Linda arrived 10 minutes later in a red dress that probably cost a month of my salary, followed immediately by Ethan Lowe. He was everything I wasn't, tall, perfectly groomed, with that confident smile that comes from never having to earn anything. Sorry we're late, Linda said, kissing her father's cheek. Traffic was terrible. Ethan nodded at me with barely concealed smugness. Robert, good to see you again. We'd met exactly twice before, both times at company parties where he'd treated me like furniture. Tonight, though, he seemed almost giddy with anticipation. As we sat down, I noticed Linda's hand brush against Ethan's arm, lingering just a moment too long. Charles was too busy schmoozing Mr. Zhang to notice, but I caught every stolen glance, every subtle touch. The first course arrived, shark fin soup that probably violated several international treaties. Charles launched into his pitch about Peterson Pharmaceuticals' expansion into Asian markets, speaking in English while Mr. Zhang nodded thoughtfully. Then Mr. Zhang said something in Mandarin to his assistant, a younger man who'd been silent until now. I kept my expression blank, playing the ignorant American while my pressure spiked. "The numbers look good," Mr. Zhang had said in Mandarin, "but I want to verify the inventory reports independently." Charles, oblivious, smiled and nodded as if he understood. Linda was too busy making eyes at Ethan to pay attention to business. The evening continued with more courses, more wine, and more Mandarin conversations I wasn't supposed to understand. Charles talked about market penetration, while Linda's foot found Ethan's under the table. The irony wasn't lost on me. During the main course, Peking duck that was admittedly excellent, Mr. Zhang's assistant leaned over and whispered something that made my hands clench around my chopsticks. "Is the son-in-law going to be a problem?" he'd asked in Mandarin. Mr. Zhang glanced at me, then replied quietly, "Charles says no. Apparently the daughter is leaving him for the young man. They plan to make the transition after our deal closes." I took a sip of wine, keeping my face perfectly neutral while my world exploded. Charles knew. He was actively helping Linda leave me for Ethan, probably to cement some twisted business alliance. The assistant chuckled. "Americans never learn to keep their wives happy. Or to understand what's being said about them," Mr. Zhang added with amusement. Charles, catching the tone, if not the words, laughed along like the fool he was. Linda squeezed Ethan's hand openly now, confident that her husband was too stupid to notice. I waited through dessert, through Charles's increasingly desperate sales pitch, through Linda's increasingly obvious flirtation with Ethan. The Chinese investors were clearly having second thoughts about the deal, though Charles was too drunk on wine and arrogance to notice. Finally, as Mr. Zhang prepared to sign the preliminary agreement, I stood up. "Before you sign that," I said in perfect, fluent Mandarin, "you should know that the inventory numbers Charles provided are completely fabricated." The room went silent. Mr. Zhang's pen froze halfway to the paper. Linda's face went white. Ethan's mouth fell open like a landed fish. I continued in Mandarin, my voice calm and professional. "You should also know that my wife is sleeping with Ethan here, and my father-in-law has been planning to replace me in the family business with her lover. I thought you might want this information before entering into a partnership with such ethical people." Mr. Zhang set down his pen and looked directly at me. "Your Mandarin is excellent, Mr. Fox." "Thank you. I lived in Shanghai for 2 years. I turned to Charles, whose face had gone purple. "Did I miss anything important in translation, Dad?" Charles sputtered. "Robert, what the hell?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, switching back to English for everyone's benefit. Was I not supposed to understand when Mr. Zhang asked about verifying your inventory reports, or when his assistant called me a problem that needed solving? Linda found her voice first. "Robert, please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been screwing Ethan for 3 months? That Daddy here promised him a VP position once you divorced me? Or that you've all been laughing about what an idiot I am?" I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. "By the way, everything you just heard is being recorded. I'm sure my lawyer will find it fascinating." Mr. Zhang stood up, his assistant already packing their briefcase. "Mr. Peterson, I think we need to postpone this discussion until your family matters are resolved." "Wait!" Charles lurched to his feet. "This is just a misunderstanding." "Is it?" Mr. Zhang looked at him coldly. "Because your son-in-law seems remarkably well-informed about your business practices." I grabbed my coat from the back of my chair. "Gentlemen, enjoy your evening. Linda, Ethan, congratulations on your relationship. I'm sure you'll be very happy together." As I walked toward the door, I heard Charles shouting, Linda crying, and Ethan trying to salvage the situation with increasingly desperate explanations. Mr. Zhang and his assistant were already gone. I paused at the door and looked back at the wreckage of my marriage and Charles's business deal. "Oh, and Charles? You might want to check your company's books before the SEC does. I sent them some interesting documents this afternoon." The last thing I heard as the door closed was Charles Peterson screaming my name. Sam Martinez was waiting in his car outside the restaurant, camera ready to document whatever explosion came next. He'd been my roommate in college before becoming Boston PD's youngest detective, then leaving the force to start his own investigation business. If anyone could help me destroy my cheating wife and her accomplices, it was Sam. "How'd it go?" he asked as I slid into his passenger seat. "Better than expected. Charles just lost a $50 million deal, and Linda's about to lose everything else." Sam grinned, his weathered face creasing with satisfaction. "I got some beautiful shots of her and Loverboy holding hands in there. Plus, I've been busy while you were playing dinner theater." He handed me a thick folder. Inside were bank statements, credit card receipts, hotel records, and photographs that told the complete story of Linda's affair. There were pictures of her and Ethan at restaurants I couldn't afford, shopping trips charged to cards I didn't know she had, and intimate moments that made my stomach turn. The interesting part, Sam said, starting the engine, is that Peterson Pharmaceuticals has been paying for most of it. Company credit cards, expense accounts, even the hotel rooms. Either Charles is stupider than we thought, or he's been funding his daughter's affair from the beginning. Oh, he knew. They discussed it right in front of me in Mandarin, assuming I was too dumb to understand. Ouch. So what's the plan? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in months. We're going to have a conversation with Linda's mother. Margaret Peterson was everything her husband wasn't. Sharp, ruthless, and actually intelligent. She'd inherited the pharmaceutical company from her father and only married Charles because he looked good at board meetings. What most people didn't know was that Margaret still owned 60% of Peterson Pharmaceuticals stock. Mrs. Peterson, this is Robert Fox. I need to speak with you about Linda and your husband. It's urgent. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in Margaret's Beacon Hill mansion, a monument to old Boston money and newer pharmaceutical profits. She listened without interruption as I laid out the evidence of Linda's affair, Charles's complicity, and Ethan's embezzlement of company funds. You're certain about this? She asked, examining the photographs with clinical detachment. The evidence speaks for itself. Your husband has been using company resources to fund Linda's relationship with Ethan, probably planning to install Ethan as his successor once Linda divorces me. Margaret's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Charles always was an idiot, but this exceeds even my expectations. She set down the photos and looked at me directly. What do you want, Robert? Justice, and maybe a little revenge. I can provide both. She walked to her desk and pulled out a legal pad. Charles thinks he runs my company, but he's about to learn otherwise. As for Linda, she paused, her expression hardening, and I raised her to be better than this. The next morning, Margaret Peterson called an emergency board meeting. By noon, Charles Peterson was suspended pending investigation, Ethan Lowe was terminated for misuse of company funds, and Linda found herself locked out of every bank account and credit card she'd been using. I was at the lab when Linda finally tracked me down, her perfect composure cracked and desperate. Robert, please, we need to talk. Do we? I thought Ethan was handling your communication needs now. She looked around nervously at my colleagues, who were pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. Can we go somewhere private? Why? Afraid people might hear the truth? You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference, though I understand why you might not recognize it. Linda's mask slipped completely. Fine. Yes, I was seeing Ethan. Yes, I was going to leave you, but you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You married beneath your station, got bored, and decided to trade up. The only thing I don't understand is why you thought I'd be stupid enough not to notice. It wasn't like that. Really? Because the text messages suggest otherwise, especially the one where you called me a boring lab rat who couldn't satisfy a woman if he had an instruction manual. The lab went completely quiet. Linda's face flushed red, then white. I was angry. I didn't mean... You meant every word. Just like you meant it when you told Ethan that I was too pathetic to fight for you. I turned back to my computer. Turns out you were wrong about that. She grabbed my arm. Robert, please. I made a mistake, but we can work through this. I'll end things with Ethan. Too late. He's already been fired, and your father's about to join him. Your mother was very interested in those expense reports. Linda's grip tightened. You can't do this. You can't destroy my family because you're hurt. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. I pulled my arm free. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Real work, not the kind that involves screwing your way to the top. She left without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. Desperate people do desperate things, and Linda Peterson-Fox was nothing if not desperate. The war began in earnest the next week. Linda hired a lawyer, a shark named Davidson, who specialized in destroying husbands in divorce proceedings. Their strategy was simple: paint me as an abusive, controlling husband who'd driven his wife into another man's arms. Unfortunately for them, I'd been preparing for this battle since the night of the Chinese dinner. Davidson's first move was a restraining order based on Linda's claims that I'd threatened her and Ethan. The judge threw it out when I produced recordings of every conversation I'd had with both of them, including Linda's admission that she'd been planning to leave me for months. Their second move was to claim I'd stolen company secrets and sold them to competitors. This backfired spectacularly when Margaret Peterson herself testified that I'd never had access to Peterson Pharmaceuticals' proprietary information, and that the only corporate theft she was aware of involved her son-in-law and Ethan Lowe. By the third week, Davidson was advising Linda to settle quietly and disappear. She refused. That's when Ethan decided to take matters into his own hands. He showed up at my townhouse on a Thursday evening, clearly having worked up his courage with several drinks. I was expecting him. Sam had been watching Linda's apartment and called when Ethan left in a rage. "We need to talk," Ethan slurred, pushing past me into my living room. "Do we? I thought you'd said everything you needed to say in those text messages to my wife." He spun around, his perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. "You think you're so smart, don't you? With your fancy languages and your recordings and your little revenge scheme." "It's not that fancy. I just told the truth." "The truth?" He laughed bitterly. "The truth is that Linda never loved you. She told me you were boring in bed, boring at parties, boring at everything. She married you because she felt sorry for you." "Probably. But she's still married to me, and you're still unemployed." Ethan's face darkened. "That can be fixed. Charles has connections. I'll have a new job within a month." "Will you? Because I hear the pharmaceutical industry is pretty small. Word gets around about people who embezzle company funds to pay for hotel rooms." He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his height advantage. "You know what your problem is, Robert? You're a loser. You've always been a loser. Linda deserves better than some lab rat who gets his kicks from ruining other people's lives." "You're right about one thing. Linda does deserve better. She deserves someone who won't steal from his employer to impress her. She deserves someone who won't throw her under the bus the moment things get difficult. She deserves someone who actually loves her instead of seeing her as a stepping stone to Daddy's company. I love her more than you ever did." "Really? Then why did you tell Charles you were only interested in her for the business connections?" Sam has that conversation on tape, by the way. Ethan's confidence cracked. "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone and played a recording Sam had made outside Peterson Pharmaceuticals the previous week. Ethan's voice clearly saying, "Linda's not that bright, but marrying the boss's daughter is the fastest way to the executive suite." "Still think I'm bluffing?" Ethan lunged at me, swinging wildly. I sidestepped easily. Apparently all those years of lab work had given me better reflexes than his gym membership had given him. He stumbled, caught himself on my coffee table, and knocked over a lamp. "Feel better?" I asked. He straightened up, breathing hard. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Linda's broke, you're unemployed, and Charles is about to be indicted for embezzlement. The only question is whether you're smart enough to disappear quietly or stupid enough to keep fighting a battle you've already lost." After he left, I called Sam. "How much of that did you get?" "All of it. Beautiful quality, too. Want me to send copies to his new potential employers?" "Not yet. Let's see if he's smart enough to stay down." He wasn't. The next morning, I found my car keyed. The word "bastard" scratched deep into the paint. Security cameras in my neighborhood caught Ethan doing it at 3 a.m. That afternoon, someone called my lab and reported me for safety violations. The inspection found nothing wrong, but it wasted a day of work and made my colleagues nervous. By evening, fake reviews had appeared on every professional website associated with my name, claiming I was incompetent, unethical, and possibly dangerous. "Ethan's having a breakdown," Sam reported when we met for coffee. "Linda's trying to control him, but he's not listening. Charles is too busy with lawyers to care. This is going to get worse before it gets better." "Good," I said. I was hoping they'd escalate. "Robert, these people are desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. I'm counting on it." That weekend, Linda made her final play. She showed up at my lab on Saturday morning when the building was nearly empty, carrying a briefcase and wearing the kind of smile that had once made me fall in love with her. "Hello, Robert." "Building's closed on weekends. You're trespassing." "I have a key. Daddy got it for me." She held up a security card. "We need to talk." "No, we don't." She opened the briefcase, revealing stacks of cash. $50,000. "Take it, give me an uncontested divorce, and disappear. Everyone wins." "Everyone except me." "You get $50,000 and your freedom. That's more than most men get from a failed marriage." I looked at the money, then at her. "Where did you get $50,000 in cash, Linda? Your accounts are frozen, Ethan's unemployed, and your father's assets are tied up in legal proceedings." Her smile flickered. "That's not your concern." "Actually, it is, because if this is stolen money, taking it would make me an accessory." I pulled out my phone. "Sam?" "Yeah, she's here with the cash. Get the cameras rolling." Linda slammed the briefcase shut. "You're making a mistake, Robert. I'm trying to be generous." "No, you're trying to buy your way out of consequences. There's a difference." She stood up, her mask finally falling away completely. "Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. By the time my lawyers are done with you, you'll be lucky to keep your job, let alone this pathetic little life you've built." "Bring it on. I've been looking forward to discovery, where your financial records become public information. After she left, I sat alone in my lab, surrounded by the work I loved, and realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was excited. The final battle was coming, and I was ready for it. Margaret Peterson's annual charity gala was the social event of Boston's fall season. 500 of the city's most influential people gathering at the Fairmont Copley Plaza to raise money for medical research while gossiping about each other's scandals. This year's scandal was going to be spectacular. I hadn't planned to attend until Margaret called personally. "Robert, I need you there. The board is announcing Charles's permanent removal and Ethan's criminal charges. Linda will probably try to make a scene, and I want someone there who knows the whole truth." "What about the restraining order she filed?" "Dismissed yesterday. Apparently threatening someone with the truth isn't considered harassment." The gala was black tie, which meant renting a tuxedo I couldn't afford. Sam offered to come as my guest, partly for moral support, and partly because he wanted to see the fireworks. "You sure about this?" he asked as we walked into the Fairmont's grand ballroom. "Linda's going to be desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. I know. I'm counting on it." The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, gold trim, and enough wealth concentrated in one room to fund a small country. I spotted Margaret immediately, holding court near the auction tables in a black dress that probably cost more than my car. Charles was notably absent, probably on the advice of his criminal defense attorney. But Linda was there, stunning in emerald green, working the room like the society princess she'd been raised to be. Ethan stood beside her, looking like a man trying to convince himself he wasn't drowning. "Fox! Robert Fox!" I turned to find Dr. Jennifer Walsh, my former colleague from graduate school, approaching with a champagne flute and a curious expression. "Jennifer, I didn't know you'd be here." "Hospital board member now. I've been hearing interesting stories about you lately." "All true, unfortunately." She laughed. "The Robert Fox I knew in Shanghai wouldn't have had the spine for this kind of drama. Marriage changed you." "Divorce is changing me more." We chatted for a few minutes about old times and current scandals. Jennifer had always been sharp, and she picked up on the undercurrents immediately. "She's watching you," she murmured, nodding toward Linda, "and she looks ready to explode." "Good. The evening's just getting started." Margaret took the stage at 9 o'clock for the traditional speech about the foundation's work and the evening's fundraising goals. She was elegant, composed, and absolutely ruthless as she transitioned into other business. Before we continue with tonight's auction, I have some company announcements. As you know, Peterson Pharmaceuticals has been undergoing internal restructuring. I'm pleased to announce that these changes are now complete. The room quieted, sensing drama. Effective immediately, Charles Peterson has been removed as CEO due to financial irregularities and misuse of company resources. The board has also voted to pursue criminal charges against former employee Ethan Lowe for embezzlement and fraud. A murmur ran through the crowd. I saw Linda's face go pale, then flush red with anger. The company will continue under new leadership, dedicated to the ethical standards my father established when he founded Peterson Pharmaceuticals 60 years ago. Polite applause followed, but everyone was looking around for reactions. Linda was pushing through the crowd toward the stage, Ethan trailing behind her like a lost puppy. Margaret saw her coming. "Are there any questions about these announcements?" Linda reached the microphone before security could stop her. "Yes, I have a question. How can you destroy your own family for the sake of a vindictive son-in-law who recorded private conversations and stole confidential documents?" The room went silent. Margaret's expression didn't change, but I could see the steel in her eyes. "Linda, this is neither the time nor the place." "When is the time? When you've finished destroying everyone who doesn't fit your perfect image?" Linda's voice was rising, her composure completely gone. "You've ruined my father's career, gotten my fiancé arrested." "Fiancé?" Margaret's voice cut like a blade. "You're still married to Robert." "A marriage that's over. A marriage to a man who's so pathetic he has to hide behind his mother-in-law to get revenge." That was my cue. I walked to the stage, Sam following with his camera ready. "Actually," I said, taking the microphone from a startled Linda, "I prefer to think of it as justice." The crowd was riveted now. This was better than any soap opera. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption, but since my wife has chosen to make our private business public, let me share some facts." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system. 3 months ago, Linda began an affair with Ethan Lowe, funded by Peterson Pharmaceuticals' expense accounts. They planned to divorce me and install Ethan as the company's next CEO. Unfortunately for them, they discussed these plans in front of someone they assumed was too stupid to understand Mandarin. I played the recording from the Chinese restaurant with subtitles displayed on the auction screens. Charles's voice, clear and damning. "The daughter is leaving Robert for the young man. I'll make him VP next quarter." The crowd gasped. Linda tried to grab the microphone, but Sam stepped between us. "That's not all," I continued. "Here's Ethan explaining his true feelings about Linda to her father." The second recording played. Ethan's voice saying, "Linda's not that bright, but marrying the boss's daughter is the fastest way to the executive suite." Linda's face crumpled. Ethan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. And finally, here's Linda's own assessment of our marriage, shared with her lover. The final recording was devastating. Linda's voice, cold and calculating, saying, "Robert's too pathetic to fight for anything. Once Daddy makes Ethan VP, we can get rid of him completely." The silence stretched for long seconds. Then someone in the crowd started clapping. Others joined in, until the entire ballroom was applauding. Linda was crying now, her perfect makeup streaking down her face. "You bastard," she whispered. "You've destroyed everything." "No," I said gently. "You destroyed everything. I just made sure people knew about it." Ethan finally found his voice. "This is harassment. Illegal recording. We'll sue you for everything." "With what money?" Sam stepped forward, his camera still rolling. "You're unemployed, facing criminal charges, and your sugar daddy just got arrested for embezzlement." Security was moving in now, ready to escort Linda and Ethan out. But Linda had one last card to play. "You think you've won?" she snarled at me. "You think destroying my family makes you the hero? You're still the same pathetic little man I married. You'll always be alone, because no woman will ever love someone as vindictive as you." The words should have hurt. A few months ago, they would have destroyed me. Instead, I smiled. "Maybe you're right, but I'll be alone with my dignity intact, my conscience clear, and the satisfaction of knowing that justice was served." I looked out at the crowd, then back at her. "Can you say the same?" Linda had no answer. Security escorted her and Ethan out as the crowd watched in fascination. Margaret retook the microphone. "Well, that was unexpected. Shall we continue with the auction?" The evening proceeded normally after that, though I was the center of attention for the rest of the night. People wanted to hear the story, shake my hand, and congratulate me on my victory. But the real victory came later, as Sam and I sat in a late-night diner, reviewing the footage he'd captured. "Think it's over?" he asked. "It's over. Linda's reputation is destroyed, Ethan's facing criminal charges, and Charles will be lucky to avoid prison. They can't hurt me anymore." "What about you? What's next?" I thought about that as I watched the recording of Linda's final breakdown, her mask stripped away to reveal the entitled, manipulative person she'd always been underneath. "I go back to my lab, finish my research, and build a better life. One based on truth instead of lies." Sam raised his coffee cup. "To truth?" "To justice," I replied. 3 days later, the Boston Globe ran a front-page story about corporate corruption at Peterson Pharmaceuticals. Linda and Ethan were photographed leaving the courthouse after his arraignment. Charles Peterson was indicted on 12 counts of embezzlement and fraud. Margaret Peterson sent me a thank you note and a job offer, head of research at the restructured Peterson Pharmaceuticals, with a salary that would let me buy my own expensive suits. I accepted. Linda's lawyer called that afternoon to discuss an uncontested divorce. No alimony, no property disputes, no custody issues. She just wanted it over. I agreed. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. I kept the townhouse, the car, after getting it repainted, and my dignity. Linda got her freedom and a one-way ticket to her sister's house in California, where she could start over without the burden of her reputation. Ethan got 18 months in minimum security prison and a lifetime ban from working in pharmaceuticals. He served 8 months and now sells insurance in Tampa. Charles Peterson got 3 years in federal prison and forfeiture of all assets obtained through fraud. He'll be eligible for parole in 18 months if he behaves himself. Margaret Peterson rebuilt the company from the ground up, with new leadership, new ethics policies, and new respect for the truth. And me? I got my life back, along with the knowledge that sometimes the good guys really do win, especially when they speak Mandarin and know how to use a recording device. 6 months after the divorce, I was working late in my new lab when Dr. Jennifer Walsh stopped by with coffee and conversation. We talked about research, about Shanghai, about second chances and new beginnings. She's brilliant, honest, and completely unimpressed by my recent notoriety. We're taking things slowly, building something real instead of something that looks good on paper. Linda was right about one thing. I am vindictive when people try to destroy me. But she was wrong about everything else. I'm not pathetic, I'm not alone, and I'm definitely not the same man she married. I'm better.